brand by design? Does a new logo equal a new brand? Have you ever thought about the importance of branding in your company? I have. I definitely have. But I'm always looking to improve. And I want you to know the differences. Some people think if they do one thing, it's going to change everything. And other people think if they change everything, it's going to change everything. I think there's a happy medium somewhere in there. And that's why I'm excited to have Denise Blasevic on the show, CEO of the S3 agency. And we're going to unpack this and more right after we thank our sponsor. Every business needs a book, including yours. Visit freebusinessbookpublishingcourse.com today to learn the 7 steps to publish and promote your nonfiction lead and profit-generating business book in 8 weeks. Once again, that's freebusinessbookpublishingcourse.com. Here she is, ladies and gentlemen, Denise Blasevic. Denise, how are you feeling today?
I'm doing great, Maria. How are you?
I'm feeling excited because this is such a great topic to be talking about. But your experience, working with Jaguar, with Ferrari, with BMW, many others, and I saw when I was checking some things out before we got started here, you also worked with Rouse Homemade. Is that Rouse from New York that I'm familiar with?
It is. And I also thought it was Rouse before I started working with them. It's Rayos, which is interesting.
Rayos.
So it's completely changed my world, just the pronunciation, but the sauce itself. So we work with the sauce, which, has come from that namesake. And it's just, if you try it, you will never buy another jarred sauce and you probably won't make as much homemade sauce.
That is fantastic. And for anyone listening, I know I mentioned some cars and we mentioned you can't go wrong with Italian as far as I'm concerned, but she was worked with so many different people. I hope she talks about them a little bit more, but there's 20 or 30. I didn't want to read off this list, but she's worked with pretty much everyone under the sun you can think of, with one exception, and I know the answer. Maybe you'll reveal that. But why don't you just dive in, Denise, and tell us, why is branding so important, and how do you help companies with it?
Sure. Well, I mean, what you said in the very beginning, do you have a brand by design or a brand by default? Companies and marketers, we all like to think that we control the brand, right? That whether it's, something that we think it's something and it goes and becomes something else, or we really clearly define it. Like, we're defining what our brand is, and which is a great idea. And it's a great theory and practice that we should enter into. However, the reality is a brand is not your logo. It's not your look. It's the experience that other people believe your brand to be. So it's a brand is really like a psychological thing, right? So you want to put in all the opportunities to make that happen. That, to me, is what a brand is. And that takes an architecture. That takes it starts with clearly defining what you can be, what is different about you that is relevant to your audience, that you can then live into. And those are the 3 things we say, what are you? Like, how are you authentically differentiated? How are you relevantly differentiated? And how are you executing that? The ARE, super important. And, many, many companies don't do that. They just create a product or a service and they put it out there. And then you're competing on price. That's what you're doing. Then you're a commodity. And, I don't have any clients that want to be a commodity. I don't know how many companies who want to be a commodity.
No, you definitely don't want to. And for anyone listening that might be going, well, what's the difference if you're a commodity or not? I think it should be self-explanatory, but one thing I've learned with hosting is never just assume anything. There's so many companies that just go into that space. In your words, why would you say someone doesn't want to be a commodity?
Commodities are traded exclusively on price. So if you aren't, like, okay, here, you drink Starbucks, there's a reason that you pay all the money for Starbucks. The coffee itself doesn't cost that much more. Certainly not the multiples that you'd pay for a cup of coffee in a diner or a cup of coffee at home, right? So they have a brand that has gone way beyond commodity status. Commodity is, I'm at the grocery store. Here are the different coffees that I normally choose from in my consideration set. Which one is the cheapest this week? That's a commodity. And that is not what you engender loyalty from and repeat purchases and high profit margins. That doesn't happen there. Then you are really just like, it's the barrel to the race to the bottom of the barrel, right? And that's not a fun place to be in.
It's not. And, through my Expert Authority Effect publishing program, it's one thing we work with the authors on, because it's like anyone can say, well, I do this, I do this. There's 400,001 different businesses in a specific niche, but you don't want to be competing over that space that everyone is. So, one of the things we go through, and in my book, chapter 2 is all related to positioning. And I
Mhm.
love that you work with Jaguar, BMW, Ferrari, because I actually name them also their premium products in a premium space. When doesn't every car have four wheels? Isn't it they all going to get you from point A to point B? What about Rayos, right? Did I get it right now?
Yes, yes.
Rayos homemade. How are they different than any other I don't want to name someone else because I really don't like putting others down, but there's two that come to mind that everyone could probably name that start with an R and a P that, someone might not think they're bad, someone might love them, but at the end of the day, there's premium products and there's not. Why would
Yeah.
you want to be a premium product, and what are the advantages to it?
And also not just premium, right? There are lots of great brands that aren't premium, but they
Okay,
own
fair.
something as a brand, right? Do I think that that Dunkin' Donuts is a premium brand? I don't think so, but I think they're an amazing brand, right? And that's
Do you
the
think them
niche that they've
removing
carved.
donuts now and just going by Dunkin', anyone's going to think any one iota of difference, or McDonald's selling a salad?
No, I don't. I don't think so. But I understand it's very interesting, right? The whole Dunkin' Donuts thing, moving from really they were about donuts to embracing being about coffee. I don't know that they would have seen that was the real opportunity for them had it not been for their competitor Starbucks, right? Like they helped each other ladder up, and that is what brands do as well. You see, oh, they've got this part now. I can change my brand this way, and changing your brand is also important, right? Re-examining your brand after significant changes in the marketplace. I mean, I don't know, pandemic, hello, hugest change ever in our lifetimes, affected every single brand on the market, but not every single brand is going, oh, how should I change? Like, what is my point of differentiation now that's really relevant to my audience that had a lot of changes in their lives that I can execute in a way that is easy and meaningful for them now? A lot of brands aren't re-examining that now. And if there's ever been a time to do it, it's been now.
Where do you think it's going to be in the next 10 years, regardless of what happens with society? Because there's some
I
things that are coming to mind right now. One of them, it's not, I don't really, I'll let you answer the question first. Where do you
Oh
think
no,
it's
I'm
going in the
curious.
next
I'm
10 years?
curious. I want to hear what you were thinking there.
It's a company that I don't really like what they sell, with one exception, and it's not something I drink all the time, but there's a lot of companies I noticed even before everything shifted, they just redid the branding. The brand is Mountain Dew. They went from Mountain Dew to MTNDW. Like they kept shortening it and shortening it. The one
Yeah.
exception is Baja Blast. On occasion, very limited, but I've curbed that for decades now. But anyway, I've noticed just brands going shorter and shorter and shorter. And I noticed it about a decade ago with all the texting and Twittering and all this. It's like, really? We can't think past 3 words now?
Oh,
Or
Kentucky
like
Fried Chicken,
June, the
right?
month of June, we got to abbreviate June because it's 4 letters instead of three. Like our attention spans don't last. What's your take on this? Because
Well, yeah.
that's a lot of branding, messaging, and, competing for attention like we're talking about.
I think there are two things about that. One is that, yes, I do think that attention spans have become shorter and shorter. Or is it that there's so much more content out there that really isn't engaging and intriguing and meaningful? I don't know. Maybe we're just really trying to sort through it really quickly. That could be part of it. And yeah, we had the KFCs, Kentucky Fried Chicken move over. We saw that, that trend start happening, and, Twitter and online things and Insta and short, like we shorten words constantly. But what does that mean? That also means there's an opportunity to stand out. You can have the really long name, right? And then, we have the big phones, and now Apple has the minis that are the same size as my phone from 7 years ago, right? Basically. So as trends come and go, I think that, brands hop on and hop off the trend bandwagon, and that's fine. But yes, I think the idea that what's coming in the future, we see that people are very overloaded with digital fatigue. We know they want to find out about things digitally. So I think having better content, having more curated, better paths for people to go down so that they can have a deeper experience is the most important thing that brands, once they're differentiated, can figure out how to do. It's just we're so overwhelmed. It's too much. I mean, the rabbit hole's fun when you go down it and you're having a good time and you're finding interesting stuff. It's bad when you're like, not that, not that, not that.
I like that. Yeah, if you're relaxing or having a party or something, it's like, let's see how interesting we can make this. But when you're trying to get something done, you don't want to jump through 27 hoops.
No, you don't. And interestingly, right, when you really need some very specific information, maybe it's, you've got a medical condition, you really want to research it. That's when you'll dive and you'll spend the time and go, to page 27, right, on Google. Like you'll go through it. But that's the only time you'll do that. And brands who think that they'll be discovered if they're on page 27
Or
that aren't
two.
having to do with that. Yeah. Or even page two. Yeah. To your point, you're right.
Yeah, I on one of the last episodes with Deb Coviello, we were talking about frictionless customer service. And I think it's a great expert authority insight you bring up. Are our attention spans actually shorter, or is just the content not that engaging anymore? I'm going to say the latter. I don't really truthfully think people are dumber nowadays or have less of attention spans. I think we're coming out, our minds are more creative and innovative than ever, and we have the resources at a time in society where we can actually do something with them. There was a lot of points, especially with automobiles. Who else calls it that? Does anyone else around the country or world call them automobiles, or is it just a Detroit thing?
I think it's mostly a Detroit thing. It's all car.
Wow, I just felt like I was from the 1880s. Okay, whether we're talking about vehicles, cars, automobiles, or a trolley, apparently. I'm thinking of jets, specifically stealth technology. They invented some of this stuff in the 40s and 50s, but technology had to take 40, 50 years to catch up, be able to compensate for the lack of aerodynamics and different things. We can basically, we have 3D printing nowadays. So I want to challenge that and dive deeper because that just, I really like what you said. I don't think our
Well, I
attention spans are shorter. I think people are just making less engaging content.
They are. I think, well, I mean, whenever you're in the forefront of a trend, you'll have more awareness, right? So the first people that were using Instagram influencers, the first people that were doing inbound with, content, maybe they were tricking the search engines with hidden words or anything. That was great. The first people who were making content videos. But now everybody makes videos all day long. They don't stand out the way they used to be. Does that mean that you shouldn't have them? No. But it means that the whole experience should be carefully curated. You can't just throw stuff up there and expect, people to sift through it and think that you're a great brand. It doesn't work that way. So to me, the idea of defining your brand, having this great articulated, differentiated brand, and then the experience executing it by what makes sense for you now, right? If suddenly, if you were doing great with inbound marketing, for instance, and now it's not working as well, that's because everybody else is doing the exact same thing now. Well, you gotta change it up. And that's on the brand, that's on the marketers, that's on, figuring out what the opportunities out there to take advantage of. But it doesn't mean that your brand isn't still your brand. It's just you're finding different ways to express yourself.
How do you help people if they want to take that leap but never have? How do you help them do that? And what have you noticed from the people? How can I phrase this without offending anyone? For the people that keep, do you have anyone that keeps kind of recircling once or twice a year, but they never move forward versus the people who do and you actually end up working with? What's the difference
Um,
between the two different groups of people?
we don't have a lot of the former because I do not try to convince people that they need us. In fact, if they come to us expecting us to try to convince them of that, I will
Right.
convince them the other way. If you aren't convinced that you need help with your brand and your marketing, then I don't want to work with you because I call it the uncomfortable stretch, right? Stretching is great for a minute or two, or, if you do yoga and you can hold it maybe 5 minutes, that's a long stretch. But when people are stretching to try to accomplish something they really aren't sure about, and the agency is stretching to try to help them because they're really not sure, that
It's going
becomes
to
very uncomfortable very
the
quickly.
best results. I agree
Yeah. So,
100%. Same thing
yeah.
with our publishing clients for our concierge packages. It's like if you already know why a book is beneficial and why you should have one, you just need to know how to execute on it. Awesome. If you're like, tell me why I should have one, there's enough out there that you should be at that point already.
And there's plenty of good content as well as bad content, but there is plenty of good content out there for sure.
Same thing with videos, same thing with branding and everything. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I see examples of it all. Again, just another example last night. I saw a menu that came in the mail and I was like, wow, it's someone I would have worked with 15, 20 years ago, but not now.
Yeah. Interesting.
So, what are some of your criteria? So, they need to be interested, they need to know they need the marketing, but is there any other differentiators where you go, I need them to be at this place, or we need to be able to, what do you look for?
We
Knowing you
look
can
for,
help them the most.
yeah, we look for companies who understand the value of a powerful brand and who are willing to put in the effort that it takes to get there, because it means doing things differently than you're doing it right now. It's the whole insanity definition, right? Everybody wants to be in great shape, but if you don't actually put the work in, your shape is going to be the same as today or maybe worse. Right?
Round is a shape.
Round is a shape and there's nothing wrong with it. But I mean that those are so those things, and what that also means for us is they have to be willing to be a good partner, right? They have to be open to change, and we have to be able to be honest with each other. One of our core values is embracing honesty. It doesn't do anyone any service for us to say, yes, we'll do it, that's what you want, that's what we'll do. That's not why they're coming to us, right? That you can go and go online with a freelancer if that's what you want. Nothing against freelancers. They serve a very important purpose. And some companies can't afford an agency or don't want change, and that's their prerogative. But the companies who are looking to make their brand stronger, who recognize the value of having a stronger brand and are willing to do the work and be a good partner, all day, like come to me all day long. That's who I want to work with. And having my own company, that's all I get to work with because that's who I choose.
That is one of the most powerful things because I think so many entrepreneurs think someone reached out to me, someone contacted me, someone emailed me. We have to work with them. And I would vehemently say the answer is no. You can
Yeah.
choose to, but you don't need to. And
No,
that's
and
the
and we've
beauty
made
of
that mistake.
what's that?
We've made that mistake before. That's something early on in early days. We would think that way, like, oh, someone came to us that we never heard of. Oh, that sounds interesting. How'd they find out about us? They must be good for us, and of course, good for the bottom line. But you know what? It really isn't, and I'll tell you why it isn't good for the bottom line. Because it kills morale when you have somebody that isn't a good client, that isn't a good partner. It generally doesn't produce the greatest work. And ultimately, it takes longer to produce poorer work and have a poor impact on your team. And the profit margin isn't there. And you're actually taking profit away from your great clients to serve this client that really shouldn't be on your roster.
It's a good point. And I think more people need to know that because unless you're like us and already done it, did it, have gone through it, then you realize it. But that's one reason I love reading books and publishing them and listening to audiobooks, podcasts, and all this because the quote is something like, experience is learning from your mistakes, but wisdom is learning from others.
Yeah. Oh, I wish I was wiser.
I mean, just so many things. It's like, here, let me save you 5 years or a decade or two.
Yeah, I will say that for a bunch of years now, I've been a part of an organization called Entrepreneurs Organization, EO, and it's definitely that has been my biggest source of business wisdom, where I've learned from others and their shares on what has worked and what hasn't worked, and the what hasn't worked has probably been even the more valuable shares for me to learn.
Yeah, what's the other one? Success is a poor teacher. It seduces you to thinking that you can't mess up.
Yeah.
You can a lot.
Oh yeah, it can all go away.
What's one of your biggest takeaways from learning? You said you've learned a lot from others in EO, great organization. What's been your biggest takeaway from that?
I think one of the biggest takeaways for me from that is not trying to do everything. That, especially when you're a young entrepreneur and you're talented and you feel like, oh, I can do this, I can do that. And you start spreading beyond the areas that have this overlapping, Venn diagram inside of, I love doing this. I'm great at this. Like everything else is what you should get other people to do.
So you're saying have a team in place, don't try to be a solopreneur?
Well, it doesn't work for me. I'll tell you that. I definitely have to have a team in place, and I have an amazing team.
I agree 100%. And I do too. I'm excited for the new people I just brought on as well because we're growing, and I think that's a good thing. You can help more people.
That's fantastic. Congratulations. Yeah, we are too. And I think that as we hopefully come out of this pandemic, I do think that more people are recognizing the value of their brands, especially as we were talking earlier, since digital discovery is so important, more important than ever now. We don't have the opportunity to get in front of people the way we used to. So really refining, how do we do this digitally in a way that is meaningful versus skip, you know?
Let's talk about the digital side, and I want to go back. I want to ask you a couple things and play devil's advocate. S3 agency. Where'd you get the S3 from?
So the S3 stands for system of threes. The smallest pattern that the brain can remember is three. That's why, ready, aim, fire. And it's three people walk into a bar. It's three is the smallest pattern, and getting people to remember your brand is very much about having some sort of a pattern that goes out there, that you have clarified what your brand is and getting that message in front of people. Now they say you need to hear things 7, 8, 9 times before you actually remember it. And that the first time you hear something is probably the 7th time you've heard it, which is mind blowing to me. I don't know if that's true or not. I'm not a scientist, but it makes me think that pattern has to be strong and memorable.
That is interesting. And I've heard you have to hear it 7, 8 times, and now people with the attention spans, now it's 10 or 12, and you need 15 follow-ups. And, there's so many stats. I think it's just don't be, what's the word, obscure?
Yeah.
You need that repetition. But that's intriguing about ready, aim, fire, the three. I did not know that was the smallest denomination, but I'm thinking of it in copywriting for alliteration. When you're doing like 3 words in a row with the same, I put something in my book, and make sure your prose is polished. There was some other sentence in there about perfecting your, whatever it was good. It's in one of the pages, but I remember, you want to rhyme stuff so it's easier to remember. I thought, I did not know it was 3 though. That's fascinating.
Yeah,
So
three. Well, it's the smallest pattern.
that's where your name came from.
That is where our name came from. Yeah.
So here's the devil's advocate part. No, that's coming up. That's something else I have to say. But you mentioned 3 earlier, and you kind of did it so nonchalantly because I know you're the expert with this. You mentioned the 3 things. I thought it had something to do with that. That's why I asked. It sounds like you have a 3-step process.
Oh, we do. Well, so there's a lot of threes around here. We're big fans. Good things do come in threes, right? That's another saying, but it is true in many cases. So we have a process that we call brand elevation. And it specifically, it's the foundational strategic brand positioning work that, if you think of an iceberg, right? The brand iceberg, the stuff on top is what everyone sees, but all the stuff underneath, getting that right allows all of your marketing communications to be aligned and more powerful and reaching the right people in the right way. So our brand elevation process is all about that foundational work. And it's a proprietary process. We've been doing it for 20 years. And it has 3 phases. And the first phase is discovery, where we get as much pre-information as we can. And we have homework assignments that we give to our clients for them to fill out and exercises that they do. Then we have the second phase, which is the brand elevation workshop. And that's where we bring everyone together. Now, oftentimes virtually, although we have so many going on over the next 3 weeks in person again, which is really exciting. But we bring people together and we take them through a curated series of exercises that is designed to bring their brains together and give us the data that isn't just the data that's available on paper. It's the data that's in their heads and in their hearts about their brands, that information that nobody else could know. And it's interesting to see, and we always, there's been 0 times this hasn't happened. We always see people have these kind of like looks of amazement as they hear the very different things that each of them think the brand means. And that's very, very eye-opening. And we help to, pull insights out, and then we return to them with the alignment. And the alignment is our team goes through everything that we've heard, the research we've done, the opportunities for them to stand out. And we recommend to them their strategic brand positioning path of where they can stand out, where they can be authentically differentiated, right? That they can truly claim and work with, that is relevant to their desired target audience. Because if it's not relevant, it doesn't matter how different you are. If it doesn't matter to the people you want buying your stuff. And then that they can truly execute. Again, the R, like, why are you? We help them figure that out. And that is a process that can be as fast as 4 to 6 weeks. It can take a few months. It depends on, how quickly we get there. But usually it's, I would say, 2 months.
That's pretty good time frame, less than a quarter.
Yeah. Yeah. Because then, right, then what you need to do is think, okay, then we can have all of the milestones they need to hit in order to execute this. And what are the tactics they're going to do? So then we're figuring that out, helping them figure that out. And one of the biggest things that brands need to do that I think gets sometimes the smallest amount of attention is really circulating it and getting everyone on board. Like the people who were in the brand elevation workshop, they're on board, right? They're all aligned, but the whole organization needs to be part of it. They need to live it, breathe it. Everyone who they interact with needs to feel like, oh, I got that brand experience. So, figuring out how that touches each of them and how they're a part of it, that's really, really important. And something else. So this is something that we're really, working with brands on right now about, you've heard, I'm sure, of like the pre-retirement wave of people retiring early because COVID made them think, you know what? I'm just done. I'm going to just go live my life now. I don't need to work anymore. As well as the great resignation epidemic going on right now, where people are resigning because they're unhappy. They're unhappy where they work. And they're like, life is too short. I should be happy. Move on. So one of the things that great brands, everyone knows a great brand commands loyalty from customers, right? You create this experience. Customers want to be a part of it. It's a love fest. But a great brand also commands loyalty from an employee standpoint. So there is a really, really important reason to improve brands right now, because when people are brought in, that they feel a part of an articulated brand differentiation, a mission that they can get behind, something that they know how they impact, that's powerful, right? Because the reality is, unless you're leaving the company you're working at right now to go to a company like that, you're probably going to end up unhappy over there too. Right? The grass isn't always greener unless you truly have a company that does value their brand and what it means to their employee and bring them all into it.
That's a good point. A lot of people think, I'm thinking people back even 20, 30 years ago, and they're like, oh, I wish I lived here. I wish I lived there. And then, oh, I wish I worked here. I wish I did this. And the grass is greener where you water it. If you love someplace on vacation right now, well, yeah, because you're not working, you're having fun, and you can relax every day. I don't care where you live. If that's your life, you're probably going to like it more than wherever you're at now doing something you despise.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's pretty easy leap.
Oh, I love going to here. Well, yeah, the only experience you've ever had in your life for 2 decades or 3 decades or 4 is vacation. But go sit in an office 9 to 5, sitting in the sun with the beach out the window. Yeah, it's going to be great. So what do you think is going to happen over the next 5 to 10 years of everything shifting around? And it's reminding me a lot of '08, where people are going, what, I'm going to start my own thing. I think there's a huge jump in entrepreneurship. People
What I
I've
think
had
is
this
different.
on my mind for 20. I know a lot of people, they were at 15 to 30, 20 years, 30 years. I was doing XYZ, and then they went, I'm going to do my own thing. I've always wanted to. I just never took the leap, if you will.
Yeah. I think that the world is different now, well, in many ways, but it's set up now for more of that, kind of the like the Uber mentality, right? Where you can do things partially. We have freelance world now. And so people can more easily go out on their own without worrying about like, oh, I'm going to start a company. I got to hire people. Like that's very daunting. And they're not looking to add that extra stress to their lives. But some of them are going, you know what? Yeah, maybe I can work freelance and then I'll control, and maybe I'll work, for 2 different companies or 10 different companies. They want some sort of reliable income, right? We all want that. But if they can't figure it out at their office in a way that they feel good or at their place of employment, then they can take more control but with that comes risk, right? There's always risk with everything. But I think the other thing right now is it's going to be harder and harder to find employees. We're all hearing about that. And starting a company right now, if you're going to rely on having a lot of employees, might be difficult. It's probably more difficult than in 2008, I would say.
You think people just changed and shifted, and even so for the people who started the companies like us, we took the leap. We decided we want to do our own thing. Cool, yay for us. But do you think that employees are going, I want to rethink this whole thing, how I'm working also? Because I would feel like in the past, we need employees, we can get them, we can find people to work. And now it's like, I think if the whether they want to start a business or not, that's everyone's prerogative. But I think they're even rethinking some things like, do I really want to go back for this, or this?
I think people are very much looking to find ways to reduce stress in their lives, right? We are living in a super stressful world, whether it's, health wise, political wise, like there's just lots of more pressures than there were, any time in my life before this. And I feel that if people look at it and go, I can have a better quality of life doing this, they're willing to give up some income for a better quality of life. But they have to really think through, will it be a better quality of life? Because just because for the next 6 months, freelancers are going to be in high demand, does that mean 6 months after that, they're going to have steady income, right? So it's all a trade-off of what they feel will make their lives better. But I would say it's a key time for people to talk to their employers, tell them what they want, how they can make it better, and be part of that solution. Right. Not just like come in, everything sucks. Yeah, the world is tough right now. But what can we do to make things better for you here or for our customers here? How can we be better together? And I think employers who embrace that, and part of that is having that better brand where everyone is aligned around something and feels important. I think that's the best thing that employers can do right now.
I agree 100%. And after my little ramble there of what I was trying to figure out to say, I think summing it up would be, I don't think the paycheck is a standard. Like before, if someone paid you on time, people were kind of happy. I think the standard has been elevated, and you articulated it very well with they want to be part of something more.
Yeah, absolutely. We all do, right? We all want to feel like we're part of something. And feeling like part of the solution is way better than feeling like part of the problem.
Yeah, I don't know too many people that I'm thinking of some people who just really despised what they did, never wanted, and I tried to ask them if you ever thought about starting a business, but they didn't even like being a cog in the wheel, even though they knew they were. They just knew it was going to be there, and it just kept spinning. I mean for years I'm like, really? You're going to do this the next 40, 50 years, really?
Yeah,
70?
it's there's no reason to live like that, right? But I also think that the whole jumping ship isn't necessarily the greatest way either. It's like with a relationship,
It
no
depends on the
relationship is
person and
perfect.
the timing. It's
Yeah.
someone I heard years ago, like even Tarzan, he doesn't let go of the one branch until he's hanging on to the new one. I can't say I've done that all the time. Sometimes it's worked, sometimes it's not, but ultimately it's like I think we as successful entrepreneurs just know we I said this in the book too. I don't love what I don't like.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah,
can't
no, that's true.
if you don't like something, you got to do something. Might not be today or this week, but don't keep doing it for months on end, huh?
Yeah. So it's funny that you mentioned that about Tarzan because there's a big mantra that I've heard a lot of times in EO, which is let go of the rope. You have to trust that someone else is going to get it. and
You
so,
do have to let
building
go at
that,
some point.
you do. And you have to build your company and your brand around the idea that you have a team that will do that and let them do that. Don't like hold on to the rope while they're holding the rope, then they can't swing. The whole idea of it, which it is interesting, but bringing it back to and this is very relevant to branding as well. Having that faith that that people will grab onto your brand if you do all of this stuff. Which again, change is scary, but not changing is so much scarier.
Yeah, there was this analogy I heard years ago about someone messed up in the company and they're like, one of the managers was like, we need to let him or her go. And the other one was like, no, we're going to keep them and train them better. And it's like, uh, had to do with the training going, well, what if we put all this money into the training and they go somewhere else? And the other one goes, what if we don't and they stay?
Yeah. Yeah. I've heard that too. And which that is, it is very easy to get caught up in the former thinking because you're saving the money, right? But that is the penny wise, pound
But is it
foolish
really
approach.
saving?
No, no, it's not. It's not. And ultimately, right, we all want to be our best, I hope, and we want to do our best. And it can be difficult. And there are a lot of factors at work. And, having a business and a brand that, it's easy to feel like, oh, it doesn't matter what I do. It's never going to be different. But it does matter. It really does matter because it will be different. It's just if you're not pushing it forward, you probably won't be happy where you'll wish you were where you are now.
Yeah, I don't know if I heard it or came up with it years ago or whatever, but I've said for a while, you know, enjoy the journey because right now, this was my dream. And with the show, I can count it, you know. I remember when I had 4 episodes, not 400, and it was like, man, I wish I could just have 10 or 50. And now it's like, oh, there's 72 in the can. That's cool. Like,
Yeah.
I
What
have
an
more
amazing thing
that
to
are
feel.
unreleased that than even were produced initially on. We're living our dream right now from 2, 3 years ago.
But that didn't happen by accident. You had
Nope.
a plan, you broke it down, you had the steps, and it's the same with everything. It's the same with, your manufacturing process or your sales process, and it needs to be the same with the brand process. And for some reason, there are so many companies that feel like, oh, we're doing marketing. Oh, okay, but what's the marketing rooted in? The marketing's important. I love doing the marketing. It's awesome. But if you're doing a campaign that doesn't have this strategic foundation, your marketing really shouldn't be again about like throwing spaghetti on the wall, even if you have Rayo sauce for it.
It's just, yep, that's great. Um, yeah, you don't want to piecemeal it, that's for sure. So I have that devil's advocate question because you said something early on that the branding, not the branding doesn't matter, the logo doesn't matter. So is there a
So
second side to that coin? Because I'm like smiling, looking at this, going, so does this mean I can throw this out, take my tie and shirt off, and leave the studio?
so the logo should reflect a great brand. A
Okay.
logo will never make your brand great.
Oh,
So
good
that's that
answer.
that is where that stands. I mean, because the example my go-to is always Nike, right? Amazing brand, amazing. The swoosh is not an amazing logo, right? It's not like someone, but what's amazing about it is that they have consistently been a great brand, and that swoosh has come to stand for that. So, you're not going to solve your company's problems by changing your logo. I mean, look, if you have something that is, politically incorrect logo, of course, you need to tend to that. But that aside, there are many great brands that don't have great logos and many great logos that do not a great brand have.
So I can keep this.
You can keep it.
Okay. And that's, I just wanted to, I figured there was a flip side to it, but I know someone listening could go, I guess we don't need to do anything with the logo. I get, because you could do a blanket statement and be like, well, if the logo doesn't matter and the website doesn't matter and this doesn't matter, or the book, the audio book, the podcast, the flyer, the magazine, the graphic, if none of it matters, well, yeah, but when you figure it out and you're doing it within your framework and you start
Right.
doing each one at the highest level, now what happens?
Right. And I would say like there are companies that come to us that we know they're never going to change their logo. So it's not a consideration. And unless their logo is egregious, considering what their positioning is, it doesn't matter. However, if you are redoing your positioning and you're like, we've always wanted to change our logo, and this is really, it's the opposite of what we're trying to say, well, then it's time to change it. And there can be, every brand, not every brand, but lots of brands go through minor changes. Now it's 3D because everyone's got a 3D logo. Now it's really flat
And
and,
then they went
retro
flat
looking.
again. Google switched it up. It was like
Oh
boring,
yeah.
stupid, fancy. Now we're going back to simple.
Yeah, simple as in, right? But but they're recognizable, right? So they're not radically changed. And even if they did radically change it, they would still have the brand that they have, right? And they have such a reach that we would know. The problem comes when you don't have a huge reach, right? And people, if you are relying on a quick visual recognition of your logo and you change it, that can be a problem. But that's really more of a packaging issue, like for consumer packaged goods and things like that.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you breaking all this down. Dunkin', yeah, now they're a health food store. There's another one. I'm hesitant to say it because they already got mad at me, but there's another big company that went more cerebral or meta, you could say, and I'll just leave that alone. I'm going to ask you a couple more things. Who's your biggest success story?
Oh, my biggest success story. I have many that I'm proud of, but I will share with you my favorite one. How's that? And my favorite one, there we go. My favorite one is it's a local zoo. So I mean, I've worked with some amazing international automotive luxury brands. I've worked with retail. I've worked with consumer packaged goods, but this is called their Turtleback Zoo. They are in New Jersey, and we helped them. They had completely they were there for many years, and they had kind of devolved into kind of like a roadside zoo, and the county executive, rather than closing it, decided to really take it down to studs, rebuilt the zoo. Amazing, AZA accredited, which is what, like the Bronx Zoo is San Diego Zoo, part of this international conservation effort. Just really tremendous. And they had been doing advertising and local PR, and nobody was going. They were having very few visitors, and they couldn't understand why. So they came to us, and we helped them really dig into it. We did our brand elevation process with them, and the where we ended up with them was the world in your backyard. But we had to make them feel bigger, but tactically, to bring that differentiation to life in a meaningful way, we recognized that. I don't know if it's a Jersey thing. I think it's a human thing, but definitely a Jersey thing, that we're pretty cynical here. If that zoo had opened and had never existed before, it would have been flooded. Everybody would have been going there all the time. But because it had been there before and had been kind of run down, all the ads locally in the world weren't going to say to us that we should go there. We're like, yeah, that's I don't believe that, right? Because the brand hadn't been reborn yet. So in addition to doing some of the work locally, we went on a national level. We took this whole world in your backyard approach, and we did PR for them nationally as thought experts. And we got them on Good Morning America, Today Show, AP. And so what had happened, and it's so funny that you're in Detroit, because I remember specifically people from Michigan contacting people in New Jersey saying, we just saw stuff about your zoo. And that pride that local people that were previously, like 2 minutes earlier, very cynical, I'm never going there. That's right, that's my zoo. And it just was transformational. I mean, it's 10x visitors, it's huge build-ons, it just continued to grow. Now, did we make the brand grow? No, the brand had a plan for growth. We helped them figure out who they should be, help them get out there the right way to achieve the milestones they were looking to achieve. And they've executed as truly being this world in your backyard. They continue to add these amazing exhibits there, make sure the animals are treated incredibly well. They're educating, they're part of this environmental conservation effort. They really are what they say they are. We just help them articulate it.
That is fantastic. People don't. I feel people nowadays have lost the art of copywriting and they don't realize the importance of messaging. I've done presentations where I touch upon it and pull out $100 bill and a $1 bill from my pocket. And I go, what's the difference between these? And everyone's like, one's crinkled, one. The messaging, arguably, they're probably worth the same, but the only difference is the message that's printed on the front of the paper. It's not paper,
Yeah.
it's cotton, I know that. But, I mean, people don't realize it. That is a phenomenal success story, and for a great
It
cause too.
absolutely is. Yeah. Yeah. No, so I'm so glad you asked that question, because it's, not everything we do is about a huge international brand you've heard of. And in fact, I would say, like, the brands that really need a lot of help aren't those brands. They don't have the money to go out there and beat people over the head with advertising messaging. So
Yeah,
that
what's your ad
messaging
budget
is
for the year?
critical.
$99 billion. Okay, you shouldn't have a problem running a couple extra commercials. But when
Right.
someone goes, hey, we have, and I don't want to put a price tag on it, but when they have smaller budgets, and they're legitimately trying to grow. Everyone is, but it's like, yeah, when you don't have a national budget, it's hard, plain and simple.
It is. And all of these D2Cs, all the direct to consumer brands that have, been springing up, they need to be really differentiated because again, the first ones that did it, great. You're Warby Parker. You were out there ahead of the curve. That's awesome. But there's a whole lot more now. And just because you're doing what Warby Parker did doesn't mean it's going to work for you. So you got to figure out that messaging so that every dollar you spend really is maximized. And so that you can release the power of your brand. You don't have to spend as much when you have a more powerful message. You don't.
Yeah, that's the other thing is even if you are, okay, I got $10,000 million to throw on ads. Great. You're wasting 95% because you have no clue what you're doing. It's the spray and pray.
Yeah, that's the
So
worst.
I'm glad you used that one because I've noticed over the years, I always ask people about the biggest transformation success story. And I've noticed very few have actually been like, well, let me tell you, I work with Ferrari. And, you could rattle off hundreds, I have no doubt.
Okay.
But I'm glad and thankful, one, for you being here and sharing this, but two, because I try to bring people on that I know they're ultra successful, but also they have heart. You could use anyone in the world as an example, and you're one that stands out for goes, oh, let me tell you about the success story. And it wasn't about you, and it wasn't about one of the hundreds of major companies you talked about. And when you said turtleback, I actually have a pet turtle. And so that's why I was like,
What kind of
yeah, he's
turtle?
fantastic. Painted. Had him 28 years now.
Amazing. Amazing.
He's older than my niece.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's fantastic. So I have one more fun thing. This whole thing's been fun. I gotta not say fun thing, but this is, uh, speaking of animals, this is a hamster wheel I painted a few years ago. It's the wheel of whatever for the show. Yellow or black?
Black.
Okay, black. So my question for you, I think I might be able to get away with this time. So I'm going to ask you. Are you going to say yes or no?
No.
You're going to say no? You're not going to answer it? Okay.
Oh, no, I'll answer.
Okay. So I'm going to ask something. Tell me something you've never told anyone.
Something I've never told anyone. Wow, that's a tough one. I like what you see is what you get. I'm a talker. So what have I not told anyone? I could more easily tell you something that has nothing to do with work. I don't know what
Please
haven't
do, because the other options I usually go to who's someone you haven't worked with that you'd love to, or where would you like to travel? It doesn't need to be business or anything. It could be, I try to go off. I've asked conspiracy theory stuff in the past before. So
That's hysterical.
I, it's basically, that's my carte blanche opportunity to make up whatever I want. And I'm like, I think she might answer. So
Yeah, I wish I was more secretive, but I'm not. So everything's out there. But I would love, love, love to work with Bombas socks. They are my all-time favorite brand.
okay.
I'm wearing them right now. I wear them every day.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, thank you for that. Yeah, I interjected that a few years ago. I was talking about it on a few episodes. I was joking early on, going, oh, I should get something that I can spin. And then that came about, and it's been kind of like a thing throughout, but it's
You
fun.
need to attach little questions so you can pull it out, you know?
Well, here's the deal with that. There's two things I still want to do. One is have it clicky clicky, so that way if you're listening to the audio, I
Yeah.
don't want to hit the mic. Ooh, I could do that. I want a
Yeah.
way where it like clicks so you can hear it. But the other thing is I originally was going to put questions on it, and then I just started using this while I was working on the questions, but I feel like it's too limiting. Like I literally have made stuff up on the fly based on stuff you've said in the last 10, 15 minutes where I'm like, "Oh, that's the new question. That's much better than where would you like to travel to?" Because most everyone, as fun as that is, everyone I have on is successful. They've been like, "Oh man, where haven't I traveled?" Oh God, you know what I mean? So maybe I'll interject it, put something on there. Was the moon landing real? We'll see what happens.
Yes, it was.
All right, so I am going to thank the sponsor again, and we'll be back for the imperfect action round. Every business needs a book, including yours. Visit freebusinessbookpublishingcourse.com today to learn the 7 steps to publish and promote your nonfiction lead and profit-generating business book in 8 weeks. Once again, that's freebusinessbookpublishingcourse.com. And what do you know? We're back for the imperfect action round. Denise, are you ready to take imperfect action?
I'm ready.
I got 3 questions for you, 60-second or less answers. What is the fastest path to the cash?
The riches are in the niches. Be very, very precise.
Love that. 2, what is the biggest problem you see your prospects making and the fastest way for them to fix it?
The biggest problem I see them making is being afraid to commit to differentiation. They want to be something to everything, and they can't be. So the way to fix that is to go through a process, whether it's our brand elevation or not, but to go find an agency and really go through that.
Number 3, what is the best way to maximize customer lifetime value?
Oh, well, I mean, to be truly differentiated and make your company truly deliver on that promise. When you make your clients happy and they understand that you are different than your competitors, that's the way to keep them coming back.
Excellent. Great question. Great answers to, I would like to think they're great questions, but that sounded
very good questions.
Great answers. So one of my favorite things to do is read books and publish books for people. And I want to talk about books. You mentioned some earlier, and I think I know one you'll mention because you mentioned something else, and that was very cryptic, and I didn't say anything for anyone listening. You're welcome. What books have impacted your life and business the most?
One of the books that has impacted my life is Get a Grip, which is the whole entrepreneurial operating system traction. So that has been, that one has impacted our business a lot and helped us to really figure out our processes and how to move forward together. That's been very important for me. And then there are a bunch of other books, but they're not all business books.
That's cool.
I mean, so I would say some of the other books that have meant a lot to me are like kids books. I'm big on kids books. So almost any Dr. Seuss book, if I'm feeling down, I will read that. And it reminds me at my core of, it's not all about business, and bringing in some of those life lessons helps make you be a better business person. So whether it's anything, like The Places You Will Go, that's a huge one for me to think about. Any of them, those are probably more of my North Star than any business book.
Excellent. Where would you like people to learn more?
People can just go to our website, s3.agency. So letter S like Sam, number 3, like the number 3.agency.
Is that like Sam I Am?
Kind of like Sam I Am.
Denise, it's been a pleasure. I know I got a lot out of this. Thank you for sharing.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on, Mari. It was really great talking to you. I really appreciate it.
All right, Expert Authority World, we have another great episode here today. I'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day, and God bless.